Us for our mid-morning edition of Arirang News. I'm Mark Broom. Let's start by taking a look at the day's headlines. Taking it to the top, South Korea protests Japan's new export restrictions at the World Trade Organization's HQ in Switzerland. Seoul wants the curbs removed right away. Japan insists it has done nothing wrong. A meeting of the best political and business minds. President Moon Jaein is set to gather South Korea's business tycoons at the top office as they try and figure out their next move in the high-stakes trade tussle with Tokyo. Plus, making Korea proud, LA Dodgers star pitcher Ryu Hyun-jin becomes the first South Korean pitcher to ever start an MLB All-Star Game. Our top story this morning as tensions escalate between South Korea and Japan over the new export curbs imposed by Tokyo on key chemicals to Seoul. The South Korean government has raised the issue at the WTO. Seoul's envoy to Geneva has strongly criticized Tokyo's move, urging the Japanese government to withdraw its restrictions ASAP. Tokyo denies doing anything wrong, though. Kim Hyo-sun starts us off.
The South Korean government stressed Japan's new trade restrictions go against the principle of free trade, strongly condemning the move at a WTO meeting on Tuesday. While the issue was not on the agenda for the WTO Council for Trade Goods, Seoul raised it as an issue to be dealt with during the two-day meeting. Expressing regret over Tokyo's move, South Korea's ambassador to Geneva, Baek Ji-ah, called for the prompt withdrawal of the restrictions. The envoy also reiterated the grounds for such action claimed by Tokyo are invalid under WTO rules. The Japanese government insists its move is not a trade embargo, instead describing it as a necessary measure to review its export system in relation to its security. Tokyo also stressed the move does not violate its WTO obligations, adding it's just a change of procedure that had previously enabled Seoul to enjoy a simplified process. Seoul's envoy also warned the trade curbs would have repercussions for the global electronics industry, including Japan. The South Korean government also plans to raise the issue at a General Council meeting of the WTO, which is slated to take place in 2 weeks. Tensions between Seoul and Tokyo escalated over the recent days, following Japan's restrictions on exports of key high-tech components used to make semiconductors and display panels to South Korea. Such a move is seen as an apparent response to the South Korean Supreme Court's rulings, awarding compensation to victims of Tokyo's wartime forced labor by Japanese firms. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
Now, as a follow-up to that report, President Moon Jaein will host a group of the nation's business leaders within the hour to devise a strategy to counter Japan's tech-related export curbs that target South Korean firms. 34 business leaders whose companies' assets each total $8.5 billion or more will gather at the Blue House in less than half an hour, marking the first such meeting since January. Included on the list of attendees are the leaders of South Korea's Big Five conglomerates Samsung, Hyundai Motor, SK, LG and Lotte Group. However, Samsung Electronics Vice Chairman Lee Jae-yong and Lotte Group Chairman Shin Dong-bin will not be there. They are still in Japan to find ways to minimize the impact of the export curbs on their respective companies. The meeting is largely aimed at listening to the difficulties the local businesses face and exchanging opinions on how to react to Japan's move. Now, South Korea's National Assembly kicked off the first of its three-day questioning of senior government officials on Tuesday. Some major topics included Japan's tech-related restrictions on South Korea, as well as the North Korean fishing boat that drifted all the way to South Korea's shoreline just last month without being detected by the South Korean military. Kim Min-ji has more.
Topping the agenda on the first day of the parliamentary Q&A session on Tuesday was Japan's new trade restrictions against South Korea. The opposition parties criticized the government for what they called an insufficient response, asking why it had not prepared measures in advance. The ruling party called for all-out efforts to resolve the problem and make sure it doesn't persist. Tokyo stepped up export controls on key materials to Seoul, used in semiconductor and display panels. The government said it has been preparing for all possible scenarios.
We are demanding the immediate lifting of the measures, and we have set up a task force that will look at ways to minimize the effect on local companies and see what is best in the mid to long term. We're also planning to file a complaint with the WTO.
Also on the table was a recent security lapse that allowed a North Korean fishing boat enter South Korean waters undetected. The opposition criticized the government for not noticing the boat and again called on the defense minister to step down, while the ruling party called for more training. The government reiterated there was no cover-up, but apologized again for the security lapse.
There are a lot of factors that led to the failure to detect it. I believe there was a lack of education and training. We also found that we need to bolster our system to improve coordination between the Army and Maritime Police.
There was also some back and forth between rival parties over the denuclearization drive on the Korean peninsula. The opposition stressed that what must be achieved is complete denuclearization, to which the ruling party and government said that is in fact the ultimate goal, and that the Moon Jaein government has played an important role in reigniting the denuclearization talks between North Korea and the U.S.
It was President Moon Jaein who created the conditions for the leaders of North Korea and the U.S. to restart dialogue. Depending on the situation, he sometimes plays the role of mediator or even steps out of the scene, and this has resulted in achievements.
2 more Q&A sessions are in store. Wednesday's session will focus on economic issues, and likely to be at the center of debate again is Japan's recent export retaliation, as well as the government's multi-billion-dollar budget bill and its economic policies. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea's overall job market seems to be improving, with the number of newly employed people reaching a 17-month high. According to Statistics Korea on Wednesday, the number of employed people in June was around 27.4 million, up 281,000 on year. That's the highest since January 2018, and the rate of increase has surpassed the 200,000 mark for 2 months in a row. It was mainly due to more jobs being created in the health and social work sectors. The employment rate among people aged 15 to 64 was over 67%, the highest for the month of June since related data was compiled in 1989. Hyundai Engineering and Construction will build a massive oil and gas processing plant in Saudi Arabia. The South Korean construction giant says it has inked a $2.7 billion order from the Saudi Arabian oil company and did so on Tuesday. The plant will be based in the northeast region of Marjan and is set to be completed by October 2022. The order includes projects to build a $1.5 billion processing plant and install facilities to provide the plant with electricity and water. The U.S. State Department has made it clear that its goal is to seek the complete elimination of weapons of mass destruction in North Korea. Speaking at a press briefing on Tuesday, spokesperson Morgan Ortagus explained a nuclear freeze has never been the end goal of the Trump administration. She added it would be at the beginning of the entire process. She also said President Trump is committed to resolving the North's nuclear issue through diplomacy. Washington's top diplomat for the Asia-Pacific region is starting a 10-day tour around 4 Asian countries, including South Korea and Japan. The State Department says this is David Stilwell's first trip as Assistant Secretary of State for East Asia and the Pacific after he assumed the post last month. U.S. officials say he will meet with officials from Seoul's foreign ministry and the presidential office to discuss bilateral relations. Stilwell's trip comes as South Korea-Japan ties have reached new lows over Tokyo's export restrictions against Seoul. The United States and China are set to relaunch trade talks this week after 2 months of downtime. The Trump administration has also said it will exempt a number of Chinese products from hefty tariffs, offering some relief to American firms which have said the taxes really have started to harm their bottom lines. Ryu Hyun-jin with the details.
The world's two biggest economies will finally resume trade talks following a 2-month hiatus. This comes as Larry Kudlow, the director of the National Economic Council of the U.S. and a top economic advisor to President Trump, said last week that a face-to-face meeting was on the cards. Reuters reported Tuesday that negotiations will start as early as this week, with a phone call between U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer, U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, and Chinese Vice Premier Liu He. The resumption of talks comes after the leaders of the two countries met on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Japan last month, where Trump agreed to suspend a new round of tariffs on $300 billion worth of imported Chinese goods, while the two sides resumed negotiations. Hoping to further improve trade relations, the Trump administration agreed to exempt 110 Chinese products, from medical equipment to key capacitors, from hefty tariffs. The exemptions will also offer some relief to American firms, which say the taxes harm their business. Plus, in a surprise announcement Tuesday, U.S. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross said Washington will issue licenses to American companies seeking to sell goods to China's telecoms giant Huawei, so long as the sales pose no threat to U.S. national security. However, industry observers say the announcement failed to answer which products would meet the standard. In May, Huawei was placed on the U.S. Commerce Department's so-called entity list amid concerns it was spying for the Chinese government. U.S. parts and components generally cannot be sold to those on the list without special licenses. Ryu Hyun-jin, Arirang News.
Now, sporting history is being made as we speak. LA Dodgers pitcher Ryu Hyun-jin has taken to the mound at the 2019 MLB All-Star Game in Cleveland, Ohio, as the starting pitcher for the National League team. The South Korean, who finished the first half of the season with a record of 10-2 and a league-leading ERA of 1.73, becomes the first South Korean in Major League history to start the Summer Classic. Ryu is just the third South Korean pitcher to be selected for the All-Star Game, following Park Chan-ho in 2001 and Kim Byung-hyun in 2002. From trade to military tensions between the world's two superpowers, China has slammed Washington over its potential multi-billion-dollar arms sale to Taiwan. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Hong Yu. So tell us more about how Beijing has reacted to this move by Washington.
Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Gang Shuang said Tuesday that Beijing has filed a formal complaint with the U.S. State Department via diplomatic channels. It calls on the U.S. to immediately cancel its proposed $2.2 billion arms sale to Taiwan. Beijing expressed its strong dissatisfaction and resolute opposition to the proposed sale, calling it crude interference in Chinese internal affairs that harm China's sovereignty and security interests.
China urges the United States to honor its commitment to the One China principle and the Three China-U.S. joint communiques, immediately revoke its planned arms sales to Taiwan to avoid further damage to the China-U.S. relations and peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait.
According to the U.S. Defense Security Cooperation Agency, the proposed sale includes 108 Abrams tanks and 250 Stinger surface-to-air missiles to help Taiwan meet current and future regional threats by improving the security and defensive capability of Taiwan. The proposed sale still needs the approval of Congress, but is very likely to be given the green light. Taiwan's foreign ministry said the arms sale will help boost their defensive capability. Experts expect a strong backlash from China if the sale goes through, further intensifying tension between the U.S. and China. An Australian man who had been studying in North Korea has tweeted that he obviously never spied on the regime, taking to social media upon his deportation after being detained for about a week. 29-year-old Alex Sigley on Tuesday refuted Pyongyang's allegation he had published anti-state material through NK News, an independent website on North Korea. Sigley said he'd like to continue his master's studies at Pyongyang's Kim Il-sung University, an experience he says he loved with all his heart. However, Sigley expressed regret he may never return and said he has no plans to visit in the near future. Sigley first visited North Korea in 2012. His family raised the alarm late last month when he went missing for over a week, after which North Korean state media reported he had been arrested for espionage. Starting next year, France will charge an eco-tax for all flights flying out of French airports. In its efforts to protect the environment, the French government said the revenue will be used to finance daily transport in France. The amount of tax due will depend on where the plane is heading and the type of ticket bought, costing anywhere from $1 to $20. France also hopes to push for an end to global tax exemptions on jet fuel to reduce CO2 emissions. Other countries that already have eco-taxes on flights are the UK and Germany. Places like Ireland, the Netherlands, and Belgium failed in their attempts due to political opposition. BMW has announced it will manufacture its first fully electric version of the iconic Mini at the company's Oxford plant in the United Kingdom. The German automaker previously considered moving production out of the country in case of Brexit, but says it's committed and invested heavily in its British production facilities. The Mini Electric could hit the streets as early as March 2020. However, BMW has decided to move some of its engine production out of the UK due to uncertainties over Brexit.
Time now for our Life and Info segment, where we focus on information useful for your everyday life. Today, we're going to talk all about South Korea's first ever duty-free shops in the arrivals part of the airport, rather than the usual stores we find in departures. They are seen as much more convenient for passengers who don't want to lug their purchases around for hours on the plane and waiting for their bags. Just buy and then go. So from sharing the most popular items to how to shop wisely, I'm happy to say we have our Kim Dami in the studio with us. Hello, Dami.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us today. So I'm aware that 3 of these arrival duty-free stores are already here in Korea. 2 of them at Incheon International Airport's Terminal number 1, which is the main one, the big one, and then 1 at Terminal 2, which is the smaller one that just opened.
Right. So after immigration, you have to wait for your luggage at the baggage claim, which can be a pain in the neck, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes that wait for your backpack or suitcase to emerge can be quite long and boring, at least for me. But it's the perfect time for you to shop your way through the jet lag.
Yeah, it's a big problem if you're taking a long intercontinental flight. You don't really like waiting for your suitcase for 30 minutes. You just want to get out of there.
Oh, of course.
So I do hear that these arrival duty-free shops are located right by the baggage reclaim area. So if you do have a bit of time, you can do some shopping to relieve your stress or whatnot. It's been over 1 month since the shops opened at the airport. So we all want to know, what do the passengers, the customers, think of this new service thus far?
So of course, the convenient location is the main selling point of the arrival duty-free shops. And it looks like there are certain items that people go for when duty-free shopping for both arrival and regular duty-free shoppings. So liquor like whiskey, vodka, and gin is by far the most popular item, followed by makeup, perfume, and food. A $559 golf club is the most expensive item for sale. $8 cotton pad, the cheapest.
Okay, so I'm looking at the chart on the screen there, Dami, and I notice one glaring omission, which is Tobacco, like cigarettes, you can buy a carton of them much cheaper than you can in most other countries. As far as I remember, tobacco has always really topped the sales chart, way ahead of anything like cosmetics and fashion.
You're right. The reason is you're actually not allowed to buy tobacco products at the arrival duty-free shops, as there are concerns that people may buy and resell them for a higher price to other people. So the shops handle around 10 items now, including sunglasses, Korean ginseng, some electronics and chocolate, just no tobacco. And yes, some visitors wish they had more options.
I came to buy some makeup, but the options are quite limited.
Speaking as a customer, I wish the purchase limit was higher.
Now, the second customer you spoke to there mentioned a purchase limit, and I'm led to believe, as a semi-frequent traveler, that you can purchase up to $3,000 worth of goods as you depart the country at these departure duty-free shops. But at these new arrival duty-free shops, I hear that figure is much smaller than that, around $600.
Right. So in total, you can purchase up to $3,600 worth of goods at duty-free shops. But tax exemption per person is unchanged at $600. So let's say I'm on a vacation in the Maldives, and there I spent $1,000 for my summer wardrobe. And I would have to, I know, I would have to declare that spending when I arrive back in Korea, right?
Yeah.
But as soon as I'm back on Korean soil, I spend another $600 on makeup and cosmetics, on perfume at the new arrival shop. Then I get my tax exemption on the makeup I bought at the arrival duty shop, because domestic products, get tax exemptions first.
Well, I never realized you were such a luxury traveler and enjoyed shopping so much, Dami, but
I wish.
Carry on.
And normally I would get a 25% tax exemption on the clothes, because clothes have the highest tax exemption rate. For cosmetics, it's just 20%. So keep that in mind when shopping. The arrival shops are expected to create hundreds of new jobs here in Korea, and hopefully it will further encourage both locals and foreigners to spend more money in the country, boosting the local economy. Right now, there are only around 150 airports in the world. They offer arrivals duty-free services to passengers out of 88 countries recently surveyed. So it's a rarity right now. And South Korea also plans to expand the arrival duty-free shops depending on how well they perform.
Well, we hope they do perform well, because like you say, they are expected to create hundreds of much-needed jobs here in Korea. And if you are buying a bottle of liquor or alcohol for someone you know, it seriously is much more convenient to buy it at an arrival duty-free shop rather than buying it in another country, waiting around for your plane, putting on the plane, and then going through the whole thing as well. But it's great that Korea has incorporated it into Incheon International Airport, already ranked among the best in the world. So this is surely going to boost up those scores as well, right?
Definitely. And it's summertime, which means more shopping and more in and out of the country. So hopefully more locals and foreigners enjoy this arrival duty-free services.
Well, I'm sure you'll make good use of it before you go to the Maldives and spend a bunch of money.
I will. Hopefully I will.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Dami, as always, for that. And after the newscast, you can tell me where you're going to go on vacation next time.
I will.
Okay, well, that's where we're going to leave it for now. Now we're going to turn to our weather update.
Good morning. You'll need an umbrella as the monsoon rain returns today. A monsoonal front is closing in on the south coast, dropping showers on Jeju Island and Jeollado provinces now, and will spread to the rest of the country by the evening. So parts of Gangwon-do province will receive heavy showers this time, more than 200 millimeters. Seoul, Jeju, and Gyeongsang-do provinces will see 20 to 60 millimeters, and the rain will continue into tomorrow. So keep an umbrella handy, you're gonna need it. Temperatures will go down a few notches because of the showers. Then readings will fall even further on Thursday. And for those in the capital area, now we have rain in the forecast for Saturday, so plan your weekend accordingly. Daily highs will be in the mid to upper 20s in most parts. Seoul getting up to 28 degrees. Busan and Jeju will be breezy at 25 degrees this afternoon. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Okay, that's all the news and weather we have for now on this Wednesday morning here in Seoul. Next newscast is coming up at noon Korea time in around an hour and a half. Until then, goodbye.